Hey everyone, Shane here with etrailer.com. Today I have a 2023 Ford F-250 Super Duty. I'm going to walk through how to install Air Lift's wireless air compressor system for air suspension kits. Adding an air suspension kit to your truck is going to benefit a lot. It's going to give you the ability to raise and lower the back of your vehicle to support those loads. But adding a compressor system is going to make it a lot easier for you, because we're not going to have to grab out a hose or a gauge to and air up our tanks or our bags from the back of the vehicle. Having a wireless compressor system is going to give you the ability to adjust the air pressure, monitor the air pressure from the comfort of the driver's seat. It's instant, so you push the button once the vehicle is turned on, push the button on your remote, and it will use the air pressure that's contained in the tank to fill the bag. So having a system like this with a tank is going to allow you to air those bags up much quicker. Compressor is going to last a lot longer because it's not running constantly to air up your bags. You're using that compressed air in the tank itself. This specific system is a dual setup, which means that you can adjust the air pressure in each bag independently, separately. There are single pass systems, which what it does is it has a single line that runs back and it ties into both bags. Gives you a single manual fill valve out the back. So for instance, if you're towing like a camper or something like that, you tow the same trailer all the time, and you only want to get that air pressure up to where it's a comfortable ride, those single pass systems are probably the better way to go. Our neighbor here owns a company. He plows snow. He usually puts a salt spreader in the back. He also has a company doing roofing, so sometimes he'll have shingles back there. So having more weight on one side of the truck is where this dual pass system is going to benefit. He'll be able to put more air in one bag to help support that load and bring his truck back up to level. This is how your compressor, your tank, and your manifold is going to look like when it's installed. Not a whole lot of room on these vehicles to install them. So how I have it set up here is probably about the best way you're going to get it. I got it to where it's up high enough to where it's going to be hidden from anything. The automatic running boards are going to hide everything once they fold into place and help keep some of the dirt and grime from the roadway off of them. All this can be mounted outside the vehicle, or it can be mounted inside. If you have like a box or something in the bed of your truck, this stuff can be mounted in there. Just keep in mind you're going to have to run lines everywhere and drill some holes. As far as the installation process, the hardest part about it is mounting this stuff up. Once you get this mounted up, the wiring is very simple. It plugs in, it's got tags on it that tells you what wires go to what, and then of course you tee into your lines that are already on your airbags in the back. So the installation is time consuming, I'll be honest. And most of that is getting this stuff mounted up in the correct place so it all is close enough to each other. Connecting to the battery, simple. You got 3 wires that you run up there, one to an ignition source, one to the negative post, and one to the positive post. Going to come with all your fittings and everything that you're going to need to get everything connected. Compressor is going to have a max air pressure of 100 psi. The tank will hold up to 150 psi. It's going to have a release valve here, release air pressure. It's also going to have a drain, so like any compressor, this will allow you to drain any water that moisture that may get inside the tank. Compressor is going to have a filter. The kit is going to come with 2 extra filters, so you want to make sure you check that frequently and replace that filter as needed. It needs to be mounted up somewhere where it's not going to get soaked down with water, preferably where any water could hit it. But if you do that, you're going to have to go inside the vehicle somewhere. You're going to drill a hole. So try to mount it anywhere outside the vehicle if you don't want to put it inside, where it's going to keep the least amount of water off of it as possible. It's going to come with a remote. It's going to have 3 different settings. So you have your one, you can have it set to where it airs up both bags the same. You can set 2 or 1 for your lowest, which is 5 psi. That way it always maintains that 5 psi when the truck is running or on, of course. 2, you can set it to your highest. So if you pull the same trailer or something like that, all you'd have to do is push the number 2 or whatever one you have it set at, push the number 2, and it will air those bags up to that exact amount you have set. So you have 3 different settings here. Third one, it all depends on how you want to set up your controller. That's something you'll just have to play with and figure out what best works for you. So for instance, 1, depending on how you have your line set up in your manifold, 1, you can change that arrow so it only airs up the driver's side bag, which is the way I have it set up. 2, it's only going to air up the passenger side bag. And then of course, 3, you're going to have it set up to where you set up to where it airs up both bags if you want, or releases both bags. Again, it's really up to you how you want to set up your controller to work best for you. Other than that, I think Air Lift's a great setup. Again, if you are pulling a single trailer, like a 5th wheeler camper or something like that, the tank system is probably not the best option. I would just go with a single path setup, which you can find here at eTrailer. That way you can set your bags to where you like them at the highest. You push the button that airs them up, and then release them when you're unloaded. Again, if you have a company where you're hauling a bunch of stuff in the bed of the truck or different trailers, this might be a great option for you. Again, it allows you to air those bags up independently for those off-center loads. It helps you get your truck up to normal ride height, so it makes your ride comfortable. Other than that, if it's something that you think you want to give it a try and install yourself, you can follow along with me and I'll walk you through. If not, check out the dealer locator, find someone near you that's able to put it in. Start your installation. It's a good idea to kind of determine where stuff is going to fit, because 1, you can see how big the tank is, compressor, and manifold. Notice the Air Lift symbol on the front. It either has to be facing the correct direction this way, or it can go like this or like this. This symbol cannot be upside down, and you cannot hang it from the bottom of the frame rail. I'm going to end up just installing it like this. I got plenty of space up in here. The tank is going to be the hardest place to find, especially if you have powered running boards, because there is a air pressure release valve that has to go on there. There's not a whole lot of room between the frame rail and the body of the vehicle to get this in there and be able to use that. However, I found a place. Your compressor, this line, is going to connect into this side of the tank here. It does give you another fitting if you have to extend it to where you put it on the end of this, and you can run a line, air line from here into the tank. The tank's going to mount like this on the frame rail. This bottom one is going to be released because it's the lowest point of the tank, which is going to be this guy. This allows you to get any water that's inside this tank out, like any normal compressor. This will go on to here, which we're going to put this on after we get the tank up in place. And I'll show you in a little bit, because the rod that turns to pull this back in is connected to the motor. You cannot get this on here and slide that tank up in there. You have to get the tank in there mounted, and then you hand thread this in and then tighten it down. There is barely enough space, but there is enough to where you can reach up there and pull this if you need to release air out of the tank. So this will be put on last. The back of the tank is going to get an elbow like this. And what this is going to go to, an airline is going to come off of this. We're going to take it to the back of the vehicle, and it's going to go to a fitting for the hose. So if you need to air up a ball, tires, anything like that, That's where that line's going to come from. That's where the air pressure is going to come from. So I'll go ahead and get these threaded on. Some of these don't have thread tape on them. Some of them do. The ones that don't, you can use pipe dope or thread tape. I have some thread tape here on this end of the tank where a manifold is. You're going to have a fitting that looks like this. We'll put some thread tape on both ends. It's going to thread into the end of the tank here. This guy here has an arrow, needs to point away from the tank. We'll thread that onto the end of that fitting. It'll look something like this. The other side of this, we're going to put on another elbow. This elbow airline's going to come off of here, and it's going to go to this port on our manifold. These two are going to run back and connect to our bags. This port here is for our wiring, which we'll get to later on. That's basically how this is set up to connect these three components together with all of your fittings on your tank. Now for your wiring. Two black small wires that come off your manifold. They're going to be pre-stripped. Add on a pink butt connector onto each end. These two thicker black wires coming off of this switch. Add a blue butt connector onto one. The other one is going to be a ground wire, but we're going to have to extend it because it's not really long enough to ground it. We can probably ground it right to the frame rail itself. However, there's probably an easier place to ground to. So we're going to extend this wire and ground it up a little bit farther. You're going to have a red and black wire coming off of your compressor. Your red wire is going to have a spade connector on it. Black wire is going to have a ring terminal on it. Cut both of those off and add on yellow butt connectors. All the butt connectors are going to come in your kit. Notice there's an arrow on the top of this. You want to make sure that the arrow is facing away from the tank. The air fitting is going to go on the opposite side of that arrow. And this side is going to thread into this fitting that's on this side of the tank. Let's take it, we'll just spin it on there. I want to make sure we don't over tighten these fittings, especially the brass ones, so they don't crack. If it's leaking, we can always come back and tighten it up a little bit more. This is plastic, so when we put it on, get it snug, maybe do another slight turn to it just to make sure it's tight on there. Same thing with threading this into the other end of this. Tighten it on there finger tight, do a couple turns till it's tight, because we don't want to crack that. So from here, get this guy on the bottom. Basically, we're going to set it up in there just like that. As I mentioned, this pressure release valve right here, it's going to go right there. This is the bar I was talking about. We can't put that on and then get the tank up in there. So we got to make sure that that is above this rail, but low enough, because if you look up under here, this rolls out. So it gets a little bit shallower and you wouldn't be able to pull that pin. So we need to be just above this bar. So about like that, the way it's sitting, is how we're going to do it. Now we have to mark it and drill the holes in the frame rail to get our self-tapping screws in. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a pain to get this up in there, hold it, and try and get something in here to mark this. So what I did is I took a piece of the cardboard that actually the tank came in, cut it off. I'm going to make myself a template for those holes. So I got a little short wrench that I can put a flathead screwdriver on it, you know, something that size, and I could just mark each one of these holes in the cardboard and then come back and cut them out. So, using my cardboard as a template, we have to remember that this has to be sitting up there in a certain place. We can't be too high, we can't be too low. So, what I did is I notched out right at the bottom of these legs here. I'm going to take this, I'm going to set it back up into place right where I need it to go on the frame rail. I'm going to take a marker, I'm going to mark the edge of the frame rail right where this needs to sit. I can take my cardboard, set it up there, line this edge up here with those lines, and then it'll give me my 4 marks where I need to drill my holes to mount this. So just like this. Now I can punch out my 4 holes. Drill them out. One there. One there. One there. And since we have to use the self-tappers, we're going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit and drill out our 4 holes. We got one of our holes drilled out. I'm going to explain what I'm going to do, and then you're just going to repeat that on the other 3 holes. Because we can't get a drill back behind this to put the self-tapper in, once we have the hole drilled, what we're going to do is we're going to use the self-tapper, make the threads in the hole once we have it drilled. We'll pull it back out, we'll hold our tank up there, get it in, and we're going to use a wrench to come back and put the self-tappers in. And we should, in theory, once we get the tank up, be able to come back, hand thread this in with the tank up there most of the way, and then tighten it down with a socket and wrench. So I got the tank mounted. I got all 4 of my bolts, self-tappers put in, got them tightened down where they need to be per the instructions. Went ahead and installed my air pressure release valve here. As I mentioned, I had planned this out before I did any hole drilling or anything. He can still, neighbor can still reach up here, pull this pin. There's still movement in it to be able to release air pressure for it. So now we got that, we'll move on to the compressor and the manifold. So I closed the door, double checked everything. The automatic step or powered step is going all the way up where it should be. It's not making contact with the tank. The only thing we got hanging down is this, and it's not hanging down past here. So we're good there. Now we can start installing the rest of it. So my compressor is going to go right here. And I know I'll have enough room for my line as long as I stay above this. When this folds up, it doesn't go any higher than this. But I want this to go up just a little bit higher. My problem is this is hitting this brace right here for the body mount. And the edge of this bracket is sitting right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind the edge of this down just a little so it sits in here and I can get this up higher. So you can kind of see what I did here. Just grinded the edge of this. We'll take a look up here and I'll show you exactly what I was talking about here and where I want it to fit. So before, as I mentioned, couldn't get it to fit between here and there. With that shaved, now I can get it to slide up in there much higher and it fits in between. So now we're going to take some self-tappers. We'll just self-tap these in. We'll pre-drill the holes first, but We got self-tappers that'll hold that up in place. So now we've got everything mounted. I went ahead and closed my door, allowed my step to go in to make sure I wasn't going to make contact with my manifold. I knew I wasn't going to make contact with my tank. I already tested that, or my compressor. So now we can start hooking up the compressor to the tank and then our air lines to the tank from our manifold. We'll start with this guy. It's got a little red rubber piece in it to help protect that. And then the end of your tank has a little cap in it. Pull that out. We're going to take this and we'll thread it in here. Now we're going to take this roll of airline tube. We need to go from the port that's on the side, single port that's on the side of our manifold, to the fitting or port that is on the opposite end of our tank from our compressor. So wherever you mounted it, you just need to make sure you measure that out. Give yourself an idea of what you're going to need. We'll cut it to length. Make sure the ends are clean. They're not pinched. I'm going to run this up behind this body mount. I'll connect it into that fitting. When you push it into the fitting, push it in there until you feel it pop. And then give it a little tug. If for some reason you need to pull it back out, there's a little ring on that fitting. Pull out or push in on the hose. Take a screwdriver or whatever, hold it down, and then you can pull your line back out. So push in, give it a little tug. You know it's inside, there's little teeth inside there that grab onto it. If you need to pull it out, push down, hold that ring down and pull the line out. So with the rest of our airline tube, we got to make sure we're going to have enough. Now, this only depends on where you're going to mount your valve for your air hose for your tank, for your external use, because we're going to need 3 lines. 2 that come from our manifold back to each bag that are going to tee off into them, and then 1 from this fitting behind our tank. Depending where you mount it, I'm mounting mine in the back. Again, because this guy, my neighbor, plows snow, and where I'm going to put it is going to stay protected from the elements, from anything getting kicked up from the tires or anything like that. So I can't just take this line, cut it in half, and then run these 2 lines back, because then I won't have enough for this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the back, the farthest bag away, which is my driver's side. I'm going to run my line from there to here. I'll cut it the length back there, go to my passenger side, run it up, and then see if I have enough left to run from here back to where I want. So on the bottom of your manifold, you have number 1 and number 2, the ports. It's marked on there 1 and 2. So just remember, if you're running both lines at the same time, which one is which. I hooked this line for my driver's side into 1. So on the controller, he'll know that one side, number 1 on the controller is going to be for the driver's side. So now we're going to take our T-fitting, looks like this. We're going to come to our driver's side line. We want to make sure we let the air out of the bags. And then what we're going to do, once the air's out, we're going to cut that line. We're basically going to put that T-fitting in there, and then run this line into this T-fitting. You know, make sure when you cut these lines, you're not using like pliers or anything. Use a razor blade. Ideally, hose cutters or airline tube cutters like this that have a blade on them. If you use like pliers or scissors or something, what it does, it squeezes the end of that, and then it'll leak at that where you have that connected in that fitting. So there, we got our driver's side line ran. Now we can use this to run from our passenger side. So I'm going to connect the T-fitting back here. I'm going to run this line up and connect it to my air system, and then see if I'm going to have enough left to go from my tank back here to where I want to put my valve for my air hose. So we're going to start hooking up our wiring. It's simple. All of your wires are marked on what they go to. You got 2 wires coming off your manifold, 2 wires coming off of your compressor, and then a single wire for your pressure switch. And then of course your ground wire, which we talked about, we extended. The rest of it is going to run up into the engine compartment and hook to the battery. Got a plug like this. It's going to go right on the end of your manifold. And make sure you push that in all the way where you can move in or push in that white tab there. This red and black wire, the skinny ones, it's marked solenoid valve, which is going to be these 2 wires coming off of your solenoid, or the solenoid valve sits back here. So those will connect there. You'll have this red stripe wire and black wire, which we're going to route over top of everything. They're going to connect to our compressor, red and black wire, pressure switch wire, and then the rest of this here, as I said, is going to run up, connect to the battery, and then we just have to mount this somewhere on the frame. So the wiring part of it's really simple. Take our heat gun, we'll shrink that up. Take all this, pull it up tight, pull it all back forward. We got factory wire in there so we can zip tie it to all that. Other than making these wire connections and getting our wire tied up on our frame rail, the last thing we have to do from there, other than running it to the engine compartment and hooking to the battery, is the filter. This is what your filter looks like. It's going to have a little fitting like this. It's going to go right into the end of your compressor. You're going to take the line, put it on the end of this fitting, and we need to get it up somewhere where it's dry. There's not going to be water hitting it. Where I like to do it is this hat channel right here, right at the bottom of the bed. We can drill a small hole right in the side of this, and this guy will essentially sit like that, and there won't be any water on it. So once you get your lines ran up, as I mentioned, you're only going to have 3. You have your pink one that goes to an ignition source. It comes with a 3-amp fuse. Most of the time on these newer trucks, it needs a micro fuse. So the fuse tap that comes with it will not work. And then your black wire is going to go directly to your negative post. Positive side is going to be fused. Make sure the fuse is not in there. And you're going to go to the positive side of the battery. Once you got these connected and your fuse tap in, you go ahead and put the fuse in and test everything out to make sure you don't have any leaks anywhere. Now we're going to turn our ignition on, put our battery in our controller, and test out our lines to make sure nothing's leaking. Wake it up. It's got 3 settings. We'll go up to 50 pounds. Now we're just going to take some soapy water. We're going to spray the end of our air lines wherever they're going into any fitting. Make sure we don't have any leaks. What we're looking for is little small bubbles to form. Now go ahead and spray the end of anything you have going into the tank as well. You'll also be able to figure out if you have a leak is if you put all the air pressure in your bags to check them, and you're losing air, and then your compressor kicks on and airs them back up again. Once you've checked everything up here, I'd go ahead and check your T connectors you have on your bags as well. As far as my valves for my airbags, put them right here into the license plate holes. You will have to drill those out just a little bit to get these to fit in there. And then for my last line, for my air hose, I actually hit it right here. I made a bracket mount to these factory bolts, and it's right here. So it's easily accessible with the hose to be able to get to it, put the hose on and take it off. Then you have your air hose to air up tires, whatever you need to do, a ball. Other than that, once you've tested everything, you know it's working correctly, you're ready to go. It's going to do it for a look at and installation of the Air Lift Wireless Air Compressor System on a 2023 Ford F-350 Super Duty.